Jack suffered from sexual dysfunction, unable to feel any physical attraction to anyone but Rose. 5 years ago, Jack was drugged during an evening he could hardly recall. Burning with heat, he feverishly kissed Rose, tore off her coat, and lifted her onto the bed with one hand, making her wrap her arms around his neck before pulling her back into a forceful kiss. That passionate night became a haze in Jack's memory. He couldn't remember Rose's face, only the jade pendant she wore around her neck. Unbeknownst to Jack, Rose was now sitting right behind him on the same flight back to the country. 8 years ago, the stepmother deliberately fell and conspired with her sister Amy to falsely accuse Rose of causing her miscarriage. Enraged, Rose's father sent her abroad. Now, Rose had returned, determined to exact revenge on her stepmother and Amy. At a banquet, Rose encountered Jack again, only to discover that he was the very man Amy was desperately pursuing. When Rose accidentally tripped, Jack stepped forward to catch her, and his heart rate monitor began to beep. It was a sign that he was falling for her. The device had been prescribed by his doctor, but it hadn't gone off since that night 5 years ago. Jack began to suspect that Rose might be the woman from that night, but Rose flatly denied it. Seeing Amy watching them intently, Rose deliberately slipped and fell into Jack's arms once more, enraging Amy. Meanwhile, Rose recalled the torment she had endured abroad and said coldly, "Amy, I will take away the man you love the most." That night, Rose confronted her father, accusing her stepmother of being the one who had killed her mother. Her father responded with a slap and cruelly abandoned her in the rain. Helpless, Rose crouched in the storm until Jack appeared, holding an umbrella over her. Seizing the opportunity, Rose clung to Jack's shirt, pleading with him to take her in. A thunderclap startled Rose awake from her sleep, triggering memories of her stepmother's abuse. Terrified, she hid in a closet but quickly decided to take advantage of her vulnerability. With tears in her eyes, she clutched Jack's sleeve and begged him to stay with her. Eventually, Jack joined her in the closet, where Rose fell asleep peacefully. But Jack's heart rate monitor went off once more, signaling that he was falling for her again. When Amy called Jack, Rose decided to put on a show. She confessed her feelings to Jack and kissed him on the lips, leaving Amy furious as she stormed off. Later, Rose tried to seduce Jack into being her boyfriend, but Jack saw through her ploy and kicked her out of his house. Desperate, Amy sought her stepmother's help, and the stepmother confidently claimed she had a plan to force Rose out of the country again. Soon after, the stepmother's son was kidnapped, and she accused Rose of being responsible. Enraged, Rose's father slapped her, but Jack intervened to halt the chaos. Shortly after, the stepmother received a message from her accomplice. The child had truly gone missing. Looking up, the stepmother saw Rose smiling coldly at her. It turned out that Rose had known all along about the kidnapping plot and had taken the opportunity to turn the tables, orchestrating the child's actual abduction herself. Panicked, the stepmother begged Rose to return her son, but Rose feigned innocence. Furious, Amy tried to lash out at Rose, but Jack stopped her, leaving Rose smiling triumphantly. Eventually, the boy returned home, much to the stepmother's relief. However, Jack revealed that the person behind the kidnapping had been caught, and to the stepmother's horror, it was the man she had hired. The stepmother's plot was exposed, and when she tried to defend herself, Rose clutched her chest in apparent distress, accusing her stepmother of falsely incriminating her before fainting dramatically into Jack's arms. Later in the hospital, Rose was on the phone with her son, Bob, but was nearly caught by Jack. Thinking quickly, she adopted a weak and sickly demeanor, once again expressing gratitude and affection toward Jack. Jack, however, saw through her act, knowing that she was only using him to exact revenge on her stepmother and sister. When confronted, Rose boldly grabbed Jack's tie, pulling him toward her, and asked, "So, are you going to expose me?" Once again, Jack's heart rate monitor began to beep. Though Jack pushed her away, Rose noticed his unease and demanded he peel an apple for her. Reluctantly, Jack complied, only for Rose to snap a photo and send it to Amy, taunting her by claiming that Jack would leave her for Rose. Enraged, Amy confronted Rose, but Rose orchestrated it so that Jack witnessed Amy's outburst, further damaging her image in Jack's eyes and leaving Amy seething. At another banquet, Amy offered Rose a drugged cake, but Rose declined, citing illness. Frustrated, Amy sought her stepmother's help once again, unaware that Rose had already anticipated their plan. When the stepmother's trap was set, Rose pretended to fall victim, but when they barged into the room expecting to find Rose entangled with a man, only to find that the ones lying in bed weren't Rose and a man, but Rose's father and another woman. Standing unscathed at the door, Rose smirked coldly, revealing that she had seen through their scheme all along and had drugged her father instead. The stepmother had no choice but to maintain a calm facade and cover up her husband's scandal, though she seethed with hatred for Rose behind the scenes. Furious, Rose's father erupted in anger, but Rose played the victim, pretending she too had been drugged to clear her name. On the way to the hospital, Rose leaned against Jack's neck and clung tightly to him, refusing to let go. Jack demanded she stop, but a sudden jolt from the brakes caused them to accidentally kiss. Jack's heart rate monitor beeped once again, flustering him. He quickly pushed Rose away and instructed the driver to take her to the hospital. Rose, surprised by Jack's self-restraint, decided to push him further. At the hospital, Rose deliberately fell into another man's arms, just as Jack happened to walk in. Predictably, Jack was jealous. He pinned Rose against the wall, warning her that the man was a notorious playboy. In response, Rose boldly kissed Jack and confessed her feelings yet again. Jack's heart rate monitor began to beep uncontrollably. Although Jack tried to hide it, he couldn't conceal his emotions. Later, at an auction, Rose arrived arm in arm with a male companion and deliberately flaunted their intimacy by letting him pin a brooch on her, ensuring Jack saw it. Jack grew visibly angry, but the male companion provocatively pulled Rose into his arms and declared her to be his girlfriend, completely enraging Jack. However, Rose's true objective wasn't just to provoke Jack. She was determined to win the auctioned item, a keepsake of her late mother. Amy, knowing how much the keepsake meant to Rose, competed fiercely with her. Seeing this, Rose's companion made a bold bid of 40 million for her. But Jack stunned everyone by raising the bid to a staggering 100 million, winning the auction. Amy mistakenly believed Jack's actions were for her and smugly boasted to Rose. However, the next moment, Rose dunked Amy's head into a nearby fountain. As Amy tried to lash out, Rose grabbed an ashtray and smashed it, pretending to defend herself. When Amy screamed for help, Jack and Rose's companion rushed in, only to find Rose lying on the floor, seemingly injured. The men demanded to know why Amy had hurt Rose, but Amy, feeling wronged, insisted that Rose had orchestrated the whole thing. It turned out Rose had deliberately shattered the ashtray and used the shards to injure herself. However, neither man believed Amy, and Jack's focus remained solely on Rose. Amy begged Jack to trust her, but he coldly dismissed her. Infuriated, Amy lost her temper, causing a scene at the banquet, only to receive a hefty bill for the damages she caused. Though Rose had failed to reclaim her mother's keepsake herself, she was deeply upset and drowned her sorrows in alcohol. She was startled when Jack appeared before her. Drunkenly, Rose accused Jack of being a heartless man who stole what was hers. Jack pulled her into his car despite her protests. When Rose bit him in frustration, Jack surprised her by handing her the keepsake he had won at the auction. Overcome with emotion, Rose hugged Jack tightly, causing his heart rate monitor to go off again. Noticing this, Rose smiled slyly and remarked that Jack's body was far more honest than his words. For once, Rose's usually impenetrable facade cracked, and she warned Jack not to fall for her. Her father's betrayal had convinced her that men couldn't be trusted, and to her, Jack was no different. A man easily seduced by others. As Rose turned to leave, Jack pulled her back, telling her he had never felt this way for anyone else but her. When Rose leaned in to kiss him, Jack pushed her away, insisting that she was merely using him and didn't truly love him. Having her true motives exposed left Rose feeling uncertain for the first time. Meanwhile, Jack's grandmother began pressuring him to marry Amy. Though Jack wanted to refuse, he decided to use the situation to test Rose's feelings. He allowed his grandmother to announce his engagement to Amy. The moment Rose heard the news, the glass in her hand shattered on the floor. She couldn't stand the thought of Amy getting what she wanted. Rose decided to seduce Jack into canceling the engagement, but Jack seized the opportunity to make a bold proposal. He suggested that Rose marry him instead. This unexpected turn left Rose at a loss for words. She had only intended to stop Jack and Amy's engagement, never expecting that she might have to put herself on the line. Amy spiked Jack's drink, planning to solidify their relationship. Knowing full well what was happening, Jack still drank it and asked someone to inform Rose, wanting her to confront her feelings. Rose hurried to the hotel, panicked, only to find Jack lying alone on the bed. As she approached to wake him, Jack suddenly flipped her beneath him. Rose quickly realized that Jack had tricked her. Smirking triumphantly, Jack said, "Is this the only way you'll care about me?" before passionately kissing her. Their intimate moment was interrupted by Jack's grandmother and others walking in. Rose tried to explain, but Jack held her close and declared to his grandmother that the person he loved and wanted to marry was Rose. Shocked, Rose stared at him. Amy, on the verge of an outburst, was immediately silenced when Jack exposed her attempt to drug him. Furious, Jack's grandmother ordered Amy to leave. Realizing that the coincidental discovery of their intimate scene was likely part of Jack's plan to force her into marriage, Rose tried to find an excuse to escape. However, Jack offered her an irresistible condition: he would help her achieve her revenge. Sensing Rose's hesitation, Jack upped the stakes by threatening to marry Amy if Rose didn't agree to marry him. Left with no choice, Rose reluctantly accepted. The moment she agreed, Jack kissed her and teasingly declared, "It's official now. No takebacks." Jack wasted no time and quickly registered their marriage. Taking Rose's marriage certificate for safekeeping, he moved all her belongings into his home, initiating their cohabitation. Meanwhile, Amy staged a fake suicide attempt to win Jack's sympathy. Rose, however, saw through her act and exposed her on the spot. Humiliated, Amy accused Rose of using similar tactics in the past to gain Jack's compassion. To her dismay, Jack wasn't bothered at all by Rose's manipulative ways. Touched by his unconditional acceptance, Rose began to see Jack in a new light. Furious, Amy turned to her stepmother, who assured her that she would ensure Jack left Rose. Jack gifted Rose a custom-designed gown and invited her to accompany him to a gala. However, upon seeing Rose in the stunning dress, Jack regretted his decision. Overcome by her beauty, he knelt to zip up the back of her dress and, unable to resist, kissed her waist. Pressing her against the wall, he captured her lips in a fiery kiss. At the gala, scandalous photos of Rose with a man from years ago began circulating widely. Jack reassured her and ordered his team to track down the source of the rumors. Unbeknownst to him, Rose had anticipated the smear campaign. Feigning distress in front of reporters, she played the victim. Amy and her stepmother seized the opportunity to confront Rose. Even Jack's grandmother expressed disappointment in her. Just as they tried to drag Rose away, Jack arrived in time to rescue her. He publicly revealed that the man in the photos was none other than himself 5 years ago, and admitted that he had been searching for Rose ever since. Stunned, Rose looked at Jack, realizing he hadn't forgotten her after all. When a friend asked Rose if she had fallen for Jack, she adamantly denied it, claiming she would never love any man. Her mother's tragic experiences had left her too scarred to trust. Later, disguised, Rose went to a hotel where a young boy, Bob, ran into her arms, her son. While reuniting with him, a friend whispered a secret to Rose. Unbeknownst to them, Amy had photographed the scene and shared it with Jack. Although Jack trusted Rose, seeing her lie about her whereabouts clenched his heart with doubt. That night, a drunken Jack returned home and demanded that Rose call him husband. When she brushed it off as drunken nonsense, Jack grabbed her and asked if she would betray him. Confused, Rose tried to dismiss his concerns, but Jack silenced her with a dominating kiss, pushing her onto the bed. Holding her close, he confessed that Rose's deceit made it impossible for him to know if her feelings were real. Yet, he pleaded with her not to leave him. Moved, Rose whispered that she did love him, making Jack's heart soar. He kissed her passionately, and the night unfolded into one of fiery intimacy. Even afterward, as he traced her hair lovingly, Jack was unable to let go. Though Rose's words thrilled him, she quickly dismissed them, saying that promises made in bed didn't count. Embarrassed, she fled, leaving Jack longing for more. Meanwhile, Rose discovered through a friend that her stepmother was cheating on her father. Determined, she orchestrated a trap. The stepmother, caught in the act with her lover, was confronted by Rose's father, who burst into the room. To make matters worse, Rose revealed an even more shocking truth. The stepmother's child wasn't her father's, but the product of her affair. Enraged, her father attacked the stepmother. Listening to her stepmother's screams, Rose smiled, but tears silently fell from her eyes. Later, Jack asked Rose if she would abandon him now that her revenge was complete. Rose couldn't answer. Taking her hand, Jack urged her to stop running from her feelings. Their conversation was interrupted by a call. Bob was ill. Rushing to the hospital, Rose comforted her son, who expressed a desire to see her happy. Despite her resolve, Rose found herself unable to leave Jack. However, when Jack discovered Rose with another man at the hospital, he couldn't suppress his frustration and sought solace in alcohol. When Rose returned home and turned on the lights, Jack turned them off again. In the darkness, he kissed her repeatedly, their breath growing heavier. Scooping her up, he carried her to the bed. As Rose tried to resist, Jack demanded, "Do you think you can use me and then abandon me? No one does that to me." He handcuffed her hands above her head and warned her darkly, "You'll never escape me," before kissing her fiercely. Meanwhile, Bob snuck out of the hospital late at night, only to be discovered by Rose's vengeful stepmother. She planned to harm Bob to punish Rose. Desperate, Rose turned to Jack for help. On the rooftop, they found the stepmother and Amy attempting to push Bob off the edge. Jack knelt, pleading for the boy's safety, even though he didn't yet know Bob was his son. Security intervened just in time, saving Bob. As Rose celebrated Bob's rescue, her stepmother attacked her with a knife. Jack shielded her, taking the blow himself before collapsing from blood loss. At Jack's bedside, Rose finally confessed her love, revealing that Bob was Jack's son. When Jack woke, he touched her face gently, urging her not to cry. Watching this, Rose's friend realized his unrequited love for her and gave them his blessing. In the end, Bob led Rose to Jack. She finally let go of her painful past and embraced the love she had fought so hard to deny.